And it looks like we are live. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carp's Corner Conversations. I'm Sean Carpenter, ready to have a great conversation here, making sure everybody can see us. Now everybody should be able to see us. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. In Columbus, Ohio as well, but in a different location. It's my good friend, Michael Bennett. Michael is a recent client of mine. He's a former Buckeye football player here in town, and many of you guys might know him from his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Atlanta Falcons. Did I miss anybody, Michael?
That's it.
That was your two stops. How are you today, buddy?
I'm great. How are you doing, man?
I'm really good. Thanks for jumping onto this Carp's Corner conversation. I've had a bunch of different people. I've had some people in the real estate speaking business. I've had some podcasters. I've had my fraternity brother Pete Blank on last week talking about his new book about the 55 things you can learn about Disney and taking it to your business. But you and I have had some good conversations of late, and I felt like what a great opportunity for us to get in front of people, some of my friends, some of my peers, some of my Facebook connections, and have you give us some candid conversation about kind of the world we're in today. But really, before we even do that, Michael, let's get a chance to know who you are and kind of your backstory, so that people tuning in might know a little bit about you. You are, I believe, born and raised in Centerville, Ohio. Is that right?
Centerville, Ohio, just south of Dayton. Yep. I wasn't born there. I was actually born in Texas.
Okay, I didn't know that. Texas kid.
My parents are military, so they were bouncing around when I was young.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were both in the Army? Is that right?
Yeah, they both graduated from West Point and then served 5 years.
Fantastic. And so little Michael Bennett, if that's even such a thing, take me back to growing up in Centerville, Ohio. Did you always want to play football? Did you always want to be a Buckeye?
To be honest, growing up, I wanted to play basketball. I was in the AAU circuit. I was playing basketball year round. I was pretty good. And then all of a sudden you stop growing. And it's pretty important to be tall playing basketball. So I switched focus and started playing football in 6th grade and fell in love with it. And then that was, ever since I started playing football, I was like, all right, well, I'll go to the NFL.
Wow. So you really thought NFL when you were, I mean, at what point did you really start thinking NFL beyond just the dreamer kid thinking NFL? Did you really start thinking there was a chance when you were in junior high?
Well, yeah, but I don't know if that necessarily means there was a chance, but I saw it as a goal rather than just a dream. I've always been on the more athletic side, so I knew that I was better at football than most of the people I was playing with.
Okay.
So I had a chance at least to go separate myself in high school. And then I figured, well, that just means I have to work hard and separate myself in high school and then to get into college. And it just kind of kept building. Those little goals were all pointed towards go play in the NFL. I wanted to be in Dominican Sue.
Okay.
That was the guy I was looking up to when I was growing up.
Were you a nose tackle in high school, or did you just play every place on the defensive line?
I honestly didn't play defensive line much in high school.
Really?
I was an offensive lineman. And then when the coaches needed a big guy in there, they threw me in there, and I did pretty well. And so I started getting recruited for offensive and defensive line, and that was one of the big reasons I chose Ohio State was they said I could come play defensive line.
Okay. And who else did you get recruited by?
I had probably 45 offers. So most, I would say all of the major colleges, all the big colleges I got recruited by, and then some smaller ones. So yeah, if you name it, I probably got a scholarship.
That recruiting process, we as fans hear about it and you see it from the outside, and it's such a big thing. And obviously the schools that have these pipelines, was it you and your parents? Was it you? And how did you build getting recruited, getting, a lot of attention? How did you guys kind of cull through all the letters?
Well, it wasn't as difficult as you would think. I definitely had a lot of help from my parents, and that makes a big difference. But there were some schools that it felt good to get an offer from them, but I never was really interested in playing football there. Like I said, the whole goal was to go to the NFL. So that canceled out 95% of the colleges just because, if I have an offer from Ohio State and an offer from Ball State, which one's going to be the better opportunity to go to the NFL? And so it really kind of narrowed it down to probably 5 schools. And then of those 5 schools, it quickly narrowed down to Alabama, Ohio State, and Northwestern. Northwestern, I love the coaching staff. I love the city. The campus is beautiful, all that kind of stuff. And it's an incredible education. Alabama, because it's Alabama. and then Ohio State because it's the hometown, incredible football, great school, and then just weighing those three things: education, a chance to go to the NFL, and then just being close to family and friends. Ohio State was a no-brainer.
Michael, beyond what the fans see on Saturdays, what else about Ohio State made you feel that this was the destination, both football and school, to get you to the NFL behind the scenes? Is it the Woody Hayes facility? Was it the coaching staff? Was it the players around you? Was it the competition? Was it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, it's the legacy of greatness at Ohio State. And then a big part of that was Coach Tressel. I got to meet with him, and I remember going around the university in a golf cart, and the university was beautiful. He was a nice guy who knew how to get the most out of his players. And he also valued the education aspect, and I really liked all of that. So I knew that if I went to Ohio State, I'd be playing the best talent in the country day in and day out. So the football aspect was there. I knew that Coach Tressel would let me pursue the educational opportunities I wanted. And I also knew that I would just enjoy being on that team because it was filled with great guys and great coaches.
As a student athlete, what was your focus? What did you study?
I just got my degree in consumer sciences and family financial planning. So fancy way of saying financial advisor.
Okay, excellent. We talked about that when we were getting in the real estate side. So take me through your college career. The first day we went out and looked at houses. I had my Florida Gator mask on because we were right during COVID, and I said, I hope you don't mind my Florida Gator mask. And Michael says to me, I hope you don't mind my Big Ten championship ring, I think, or your national championship ring, right?
Yeah, well, the national championship.
Yeah. And so I was like, touche, brother, touche. So any really fun memories of a special game or a moment in a game?
Man, trying to pick out one memory from those 4 years is tough. But
it's scores or anything like that, or?
Well, so my senior year had a lot of really big moments. Every time you beat Michigan is an incredible moment for any Ohio State fan or player or coach or anybody. It's just, you're never going to forget those. But we only got to play Alabama once, and we beat them. And that whole leading up to that, obviously you hear all the SEC Big Ten stuff. I'm sure you were sitting on your couch like, this isn't even a competition, telling everybody. And so it felt good to go out there and see a team that we knew we could beat and that nobody expected us to beat. I think we whooped them. So that was an incredible atmosphere, incredible game, all that stuff. And then the Big Ten championship my senior year was it was on another level, because Wisconsin was a good team, like a very, very good team. So to beat them 59-0 as a competitor, you know that you broke their will. And I don't know if everybody has that same excitement when you're going head to head with someone and you just wear them. You don't just beat them, you break their will. And that's as a football player. It sounds very aggressive, but as a football player, that is the ultimate victory because it's a game of toughness. And you not only prove that you were more talented or better executed or whatever, you prove that you were tougher. And so that Big Ten championship game was a lot of fun.
You look back on your career in college, Michael, and there's probably some life lessons in, you had two different leaders. You had Tressel, and then you had really Fickle for a year, and then you had Urban Meyer. You had, the opportunity to play in the very first ever national championship, right? And so you had a adversity with your starting quarterback, switching, at the end of the season there with Cardell Jones coming in and winning, obviously, the end of the Michigan game and then the Big Ten championship game and what he did in the playoffs. That was probably a lot of beyond just the football. Mm-hmm. You can really look back at all those lessons you learned in between when you're not in between the sidelines, right?
Yeah, football is a special sport because it's geared to just teaching you life lessons. Like every single day, every coach is trying to put as much adversity into your life, and you have to overcome it. That's their goal, is to make you as uncomfortable, as tired, as whatever, and then see how you respond in those situations. So that overarching goal of overcoming adversity or overarching lesson of overcoming adversity is pivotal to football, and which to me is what makes it such a great sport. And then the other there's so many lessons, but the other major lesson would be adapting. So you never know what's going to happen in football. You could be playing next to somebody and they break their leg, and now you got a new guy standing next to you. you guys have to be able to link up and play well and communicate. I mean, you might be playing well, you're up 14-0, and all of a sudden they get a defensive turnover for a touchdown, and they go out and score another touchdown, and now it's 14-14. How are you going to respond? So, I mean, I could probably write a book about the things you learn playing football, and then different leadership styles. Like, I never really got to play under Tressel, but him and Urban they're two different beasts. They're two entirely different personalities. I think Coach Fickle was actually like a happy in between with them, where he was really he wasn't going to berate you too much, but he wasn't going to be very nice all the time. So, like I said, I didn't play under Tressel, so I don't want to speak too much about his coaching style. But right. Urban would get after you. You know, he didn't accept anything except your absolute best. And if your absolute best wasn't good enough, he didn't accept that either. He'd just say, get better. And so you got better. And so, I mean, you can see what he does to his teams is he forces them to be great. There's no, let's do this, guys. Come on, we can do this together. It's no, you have to be great, because that's how he lives his life.
Which players on the defensive unit with you do you feel pushed you to be a better player?
Ooh. This might sound generic, but probably all of them. Just when I play football, I really like the brotherhood aspect of it. I don't playing for the money of it, playing for the fame, playing for whatever just isn't as appealing. It's a brutal sport. So if you don't feel like you have real teammates, real friends to play for, then it just kind of, for me, it lost some of the luster. But I would say, man, Joey was a good friend. Joey Bosa, he was a good friend. And, you didn't want a sophomore showing you up, so you had to come play every day. But there were so many good athletes on that team, man. There's so many good athletes on that defense, and all of them were good guys, like just genuinely just good friends, and you just don't want to disappoint them. We watch film after every game, and you don't get to hide your face when you get pancaked. You don't get to hide your face when you miss a tackle. So I took that seriously. I was embarrassed every time I had a bad play, and I didn't want them to see that. I didn't want to put that on film, especially as a leader. The way I go is the way the team goes. So if I'm being okay with just getting blocked all day, then why would I expect anything out of anybody else?
Yeah, love it. So you guys win the national championship. Then you got that long wait, not really a long wait, but you got to wait till April for the draft. And did you have any idea that you were going to end up in Jacksonville?
No, they do a bunch of misdirection. Unless you're like a top 5 pick, you have no idea where you're going. Even those guys sometimes get, the runaround, because it's not just about the NFL teams. They don't care if you know or not. Like I said, football's all about adapting. They want other teams to think they're going to get somebody so that then they can scheme to go get the guy they really want. So when I was training, I was projected to go like late 1st to 3rd, and my injury history just tanked me. And so once you start going after the 4th round, it's a crapshoot. Even the teams don't know who they're going to pick until they pick them. They've got like a big board of guys that are left, and they kind of go through what positions they need or what they see out of these people, and then they make their decision kind of, I won't say spur of the moment, but it's not like they planned ahead for it.
So, Michael, you get drafted and you go to the NFL. You're a professional football player. How quickly did your maturity level have to go from what you felt was probably pretty mature in college to all of a sudden being a rookie in the NFL?
Yeah, it probably had to go there faster than it went there. You go from college where every meal is taken care of, every study, like your day is set from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Everything's scheduled for you. So you kind of just show up where they tell you to show up and do your thing. In the NFL, it's similar, but you've got a lot of free time at the end of the day, or especially in like April through July, you got a lot of free time. So you not only have to structure your own workouts, you got to structure your diet, you got to structure how you study, you got to structure when you stretch, if you do meditation. It goes from having everybody or having this college take care of everything you need to all of a sudden you're not just a professional, you're a professional in one of the most competitive, brutal industries in the world. So, I probably should have transitioned faster, but it was all right.
So you played how many years with Jacksonville, and then how many years with Atlanta?
And then 2 with Atlanta.
Okay, so 5 years in the NFL. Pretty awesome to get a chance to play against some of the guys that you grew up, watching on Sundays and Thursday nights and Saturdays during the end of the season. So let's fast forward to the conversation, Michael. How does your NFL career end and your next chapter of your life start?
Like, why does it end?
Yeah, I mean, you
injuries, man. Even through my NFL career, I had a ton of injuries, and they weren't like little bumps and bruises. They were injuries that were surgeries or like muscle tears that required 8-week recoveries that ended up just going to IR. It was just, they were big injuries. And once you start getting hurt, it's pretty hard to stop. So after I broke my ankle and then it got infected and I had to have another surgery, it was just kind of like, all right, that's enough, because with all of these injuries, it takes me about 2 hours every morning to get my body ready just to go lift and practice. Like, it's not sustainable.
Right.
So, and I saw that coming. Like I said, I've been dealing with the injuries, so I saw my football death pretty far in advance. And then once you accept that, hey, it's time to hang up the cleats and move on to the next thing, you can't dip your toe in. You just got to jump into the pool and go.
So you bought your first investment property with our friend Elaine down in Jacksonville.
I did.
What kind of brought that on? Was that just a move that you got some advice from people? I think the very first time we went out and talked, Michael, we talked about, those kids getting college, they leave college and all of a sudden they get money. Some of them, a big, huge signing bonus, first time ever with money. And you hear the stories of them being broke before they're even out of the NFL. You made a decision you saw real estate as a vehicle for you to start building kind of the Michael Bennett Foundation, right?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, I'll have to take it back a little bit, but that's a tale as old as time. Is this NFL player who has the whole world at his hands, or athlete in general, lives it up, doesn't look towards the future, and then all of a sudden it ends before they're ready, and they're just out of luck. They haven't, they didn't apply themselves in school, yada, yada. They're having a hard time. And so when I went to college, I originally wanted to go for pre-med, and then realized I wasn't cut out to do pre-med and football. And so I switched it. So I was like, okay, well, what should I do? And I switched to finance because I figured, like I said, I was like, I'm going to the NFL, so I better learn how to handle money. And that worked out really well for me, because then when I got to the NFL, I understood budgeting. I understood planning for the future. I understood, expenses versus revenue, all that kind of stuff. Just those little things that it takes to realize, hey, I can't be spending more than I'm bringing in. And on top of that, this could end any day. So I need to have some money squirreled away. And that all led to real estate, because I'm making money. Now, how do I make my money grow for me? And real estate was a very obvious choice, because you can do stock markets and all that kind of stuff. I don't like stock. I don't really like the stock market. I definitely don't want to do it myself. But with real estate, I really like the meritocracy approach. You genuinely get out from real estate as much as you put in. If you want to hustle, you make a lot of money. If you want to just kind of relax and do your thing, you can make some, but it's all kind of, what's the word? It goes with the effort that you put in.
Yeah.
And so I really like the idea of having rental properties and putting my money in that and rolling those over to new rental properties, and still getting my feet wet with it. But yeah, that first one has gone pretty well.
So you still have tenants in the one in Jacksonville, and you come up to Columbus. Elaine connects the two of us, and we met and we talked kind of right after COVID started. Right, we had a kind of a conversation much like this, except we weren't sharing it out live on Facebook. We looked at a couple different areas in Columbus. You at that beginning weren't sure if you were going to be kind of if you wanted tenants or if you wanted to kind of do a flip.
And that was specifically because of COVID. And then the difficult part is if you don't have a steady W-2 income, then banks won't loan to you. And since I don't have already a portfolio that I can show investors that says, hey, like, I'm good at this, then I've got to start with getting loans from banks. And that's where the flipping came in. Was I want to be able to show banks that I can find deals, I can make money, and then I can start borrowing money to get into passive income with rentals. And that's the end goal. But I mean, that the passive income can go from rentals to industrial to commercial, all that kind of stuff. But I got to find my niche.
Yeah. Well, we got a good project going on right now. You and your contractors. I mean, the pictures you've sent me, it
looks good. It's coming to a close. That last 10% is fighting me.
Got to keep
almost there.
Pushing. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes, and we got, like I said, got to dot our I's and cross our T's. But as we finished up what was a very quick, easy deal, and you got your guys in there working on the property right away. I think probably 3 weeks after we closed, an event happened up in Minneapolis that kind of changed our world, Michael. Mm-hmm. And you and I had some kind of casual conversations in the car. I mean, you're still in your 20s, right, Michael?
27.
Yeah, 27. So I'm almost double your age. Old white guy, young African American. We had conversations, but just from a realtor to the agent, from as football fans, as college fans, we met up for beers because I really, after that whole thing happened and this whole Black Lives Matter happened, I realized that I don't think I've ever had that conversation with someone. So I invited you out for beers, and I just said, look, I just want to go out. Let's kind of congratulate you on buying your place here in Columbus and appreciate that, but also just have a conversation. Like, just open my eyes a little bit, open my ears a little bit. I don't know where we want to start this, and I have no, I told you before we even went on the air, I have no agenda on this. I just thought it'd be good for us to have a conversation that other people hear, because we had a conversation over at happy hour. Where were we there? An hour and a half, and it was awesome. I mean, it was fun. So, just I guess tell me a little bit about where we're at now, and then maybe we can go back and see if there was any clues, from your time in Centerville, from your time with your parents, going through West Point, on what we can do to get better. And when I say what we can do, I mean the world. I mean the society. I mean Sean Carpenter and Michael Bennett. How can we create this better conversation that doesn't have to happen because somebody died at the hands of a police officer?
So I think, man, it's such a complex situation that we're in right now, and all of it is exacerbated because of COVID. These are issues that have been there that are now really coming to the forefront, and I'm hoping that America, in particular, white America, can look at it and instead of just waiting for it to go away, actually wants to do something about it. Because there have been riots before, there have been problems before. We had the whole civil rights movement, and I actually didn't realize that after the civil rights movement, people thought that for the most part, race relations were fixed. They were better. The civil rights movement succeeded. Martin Luther King we almost achieved his dream. We just had that little bit left to go. But I would say that most people, because it's not really taught in school, don't understand that the civil rights movement didn't end because there was a victory. It ended because just about every single black leader was either exiled or murdered. And I think that's a really important point to stress, because that shows that Martin Luther King Jr., everybody knows he was killed, and all he did was preach love. Malcolm X was killed. He was actually killed by, I think, the Muslim Brotherhood. But then, you had this just assortment of different black leaders who met horrible ends or were kicked out of the country by the FBI. Like I said, we could talk about this for hours, but you had black people in this country in the 60s saying we deserve to be treated like people. We shouldn't have to drink at different water fountains, sit at the back of the bus, all of that stuff. And it got to a point where it wasn't just, your fringe leftists versus your fringe rights. It was the FBI who was going through shutting this stuff down. They tried to convince Martin Luther King to kill himself. They murdered Fred Hampton, who was a 21-year-old. They considered him a black messiah. And they were pretty worried that he was going to get black people together to, I don't know, he was nonviolent, just to get black people together. So they went in and just shot him in his bed. And so I think all of that is important when you're looking at what's happening now, because I feel like a lot of white America sees these things as isolated incidents and stuff like that, when black America says, no, this is just an extension of what's been going on for 400 years, and enough is enough. It's 2020. We are as close as we've ever been to being truly equal members in this society. Like, I don't feel like I'm less than random white people I meet. And I don't feel like random white people I meet feel like I'm less than them. And So I think it's still more of a fringe thing, but the problem is the system that has been created, that we're in right now, was created when Black people were not considered even really human. And to think that, oh, that system must have just been colorblind. That system must have just been, it works perfectly for everybody as soon as Black people get equality, I think is misguided and just leads to a lot of these issues.
Michael, do you remember any racism as a kid? Like, do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Can you tell me how it came up? Was it in school? Was it on the playground? Was it?
Well, yeah. So I'm biracial, and you encounter a lot of racism from both white people and Black people when you're biracial, just because you're other. But I want to say the first real situation where I felt like, okay, this town doesn't want me here. I was an avid reader growing up. We had a library probably like a mile away from our house, and I would go there almost every day in the summers and read books and switch them out and all that kind of stuff. So I would walk to the library. I had a backpack full of books as I was leaving, and usually, like, when people look at you, you wave at them and all that kind of stuff. And this lady was just glaring at me from her car. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I glared back because I don't like people glaring at me. And I was 10 years old during this. And I'm walking back to the house, and a cop pulls me over and says that they got a call that I was looking into cars. So this lady called the cops because she didn't like that I looked at her, because she was looking at me. And he made me empty out my book bag on the street to make sure whatever. I don't know. Apparently there are a bunch of 10-year-old drug runners in Centerville, Ohio. And that was the first time I was like, all right, well, at 10 years old, I know that's not right. I know I wasn't doing anything wrong. My parents raised me to be nothing but respectful to authority, all that kind of stuff. And so that really had a big impact on how I viewed police officers and how I viewed my town in general, that was something that my parents couldn't even seek retribution for. They couldn't do anything other than say, hey, we're sorry that happened to you. And then, just being a Black kid in a white city, you grow up with racism. It just is what it is. Like, I didn't know that was something that I didn't have to accept until I got to college. Obviously it pisses you off and you say stuff about it in the moment, but it doesn't, it just feels like that's what life is. And I don't feel like people should have to deal with that.
We're hearing the word systemic racism a lot in the last few weeks in these discussions around the country, from leadership on down to people on the streets. Because I think, once again, I think maybe one side of it is blind to it, and as you said, sort of in your discussion of being a kid, you almost come to accept it as part of the world we live in. Do you have any examples of like what people can look for when it comes to systemic, in the classrooms, or like I said, just the police and the relationships?
So, like, systemic racism is tough to just identify, because it's something that we need to personally keep an eye out on how we approach some of these issues. Because as an individual, we probably can't do much against systemic racism, because that has to do with the laws and how we police people and the prison system and the economic system, and how does capitalists work when one section of the country was completely denied equity for 300 years.
Right.
Like, okay, well, now you've had a 300-year head start, and now we're just all of a sudden equal. That plays into systemic racism, or the stereotypes that you see on TV. For a while there, if you were a Black person, the roles you got were the thief, the drug dealer, the prisoner, all that kind of stuff. It's gotten a lot better lately, especially on like TV and movies and stuff like that. But more than anything, I think it's just, I don't know, man, systemic racism, when you start looking at it, I think of the prison system. I think of how people view Black people and all that kind of stuff. Like, people see me and they see big, Black, and tattooed, and then I start talking to them like, oh, you're so articulate. And how many times have you been told that you're articulate? Like, it's just because I surprised them, because they have this conception of me when they see me that I'm not supposed to be able to put 3-syllable words together. And you would think, oh, that's not that harmful, anything like that. But when you're always expected to be dumb or a brute or something like that, eventually you're like, well, screw it. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, this is what they see me as. I may as just well be that. And I think that's a lot of America that just kind of falls into the role that they've been given because they haven't been able to escape it.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of, oh, you're so articulate. That's just,
That pissed me off from a young age. I used to get that growing up all the time, and I never heard anybody else get called articulate. So why are you calling, why are you calling me articulate? And it's frustrating because it's a compliment, so you can't make an issue about it, because they are complimenting you, say, hey, you speak well. But I don't know. It was always frustrating that people would be so surprised that I did well in class, or so surprised that I was a good test taker, or that I had more thoughts than just, I don't know what thoughts they expected me to have, but they were always just so surprised. And I don't know, that was frustrating because it's like, well, why are my expectations of myself so much higher than everybody else's?
Michael, do you think you find comfort in sports because when you're on that field, you are the same color as the other players on your team, meaning the uniform color? The old story about Bobby Knight used to say the reason why the name's not on the back of the jersey is because it's on the front of the jersgy, right? And you're Indiana. I don't care who you are, you play for Indiana. Do you feel like in a sport? I mean, or do you look back and say, no, in high school, Sean, there was racism on the football team, and in college there was racism on the football team. There was issues.
So this is gonna, once again, football is an aggressive sport, so bear with me if I start saying some aggressive stuff, but the nice part about football, the reason that it's hard to have a lot of racism in football is, one, there are a lot of black people who play football, and two, you're allowed to be physical. So if you come at me with racist stuff, I'm allowed to beat you up. In real life, you can't just beat somebody up. But in the football field or whatever, we're physical, we're aggressive people, so you don't get to just say whatever you want. Like, you have to police that. And if we want to be a real team, then you don't get to just say racist stuff. I know that there were racist people on the teams that I've been on, but they don't have that freedom to say it because we're trying to be a team. And if you don't like me because of the color of my skin, or you're going to say some stereotypical stuff, then we're going to have some problems. And so one of the reasons I did love football is I love contact. I love the physicality of it. I love hitting somebody, and I love being hit, and then once again showing that I'm tougher than that person. And so it's the perfect sport for me. But it's also, you get to air stuff out. If you had a problem with me and we're on the same team, you don't have to sit there and play politics. You can tell me, hey man, so and so, all this kind of stuff, and we can air that out right here and now, and then move forward as teammates. And I think that's a big reason that sports are not always a safe place for people to all come together, but you all have this joint mission, and the mission is bigger than anything else. So if you got problems with black people, then go to a team with no black people, or you're just going to be a bad teammate. And being a bad teammate is worse than anything else.
Yeah, and we've seen that over the years with, I don't think it's any surprise to say Boston was usually considered a very racist town with the Red Sox and the Celtics, and there's certainly stories of other programs around the country from a college standpoint. Was there any difference from college to the NFL? I mean, once again,
when it comes to racism,
yeah, just because now you're an athlete with money, does it? But you're a professional. I mean, it's your job to get to the stadium. Like you said, your day wasn't planned for you. When you're a student, you're a student athlete. But when you're a professional, you got to show up. And was there anything? Did you feel like having that NFL tag did anything for you? So
wait. Is this all under the scope of race relations, or just in general, what were the differences?
Yeah, when it comes to race relations, we're seeing a lot of athletes really take that opportunity to stand up and talk because I think people listen to them.
Yeah, a lot of sports are dominated by. Yeah, a lot of sports are dominated by black athletes, and I think something that white athletes have that a lot of other white people don't have is an opportunity to day in and day out interact with black people from a lot of different scopes of life. Like, you deal with black people from the hood, you deal with black people from the hood who didn't have their parents growing up, they only had their grandmother or an aunt to raise them. You have black people growing up in really good families, or that have 2-parent households who both have steady jobs and all that kind of stuff. Like, you grow up around white people from the country, and you grow up around all different types of people. And when you learn how to interact with those people, you don't have to like them all. Like, obviously you're going to have different cultures and different values, but you at the very least start understanding where they come from and why they behave the way they behave and stuff like that. And I think that's such a different experience that most people don't get. Same with black people not experiencing white people until they play a sport. there are plenty of black neighborhoods that are segregated, and they don't really get experience around white people until they go into a new football locker room. And so when you start getting into the NFL, I did not deal with any. I didn't hear any racism in the NFL. I didn't even really deal with any stereotypes in the NFL. Guys are there to win football games and make money. And honestly, when you start really focusing on making money, the color of someone's skin doesn't matter that much.
Sure.
And that, so these guys you're trying to go get $1 million, and you're going to let that get sidelined because this guy's a different color or because they have slightly different values than you? No. That doesn't even factor in.
That's good to hear. So how do we start changing the gap? How do we start shortening the gap? I mean, is it? I think I'll tell you what I think. Can you tell me? I think it starts with parenting, changing the next generation to think differently, right? And I'm a parent of a 21-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son who's getting ready to go off to college. I guarantee you, Michael, and we talked about this the other day, the things that I taught my son are different than probably what your dad taught you, because your dad had to teach you different things, right? Mm-hmm. I told Ryan, if you see blue lights behind you, pull over and be respectful. I'm sure your dad said that, and then there was probably 3 or 4 other things to say, and do this and do this and do this. So how can we start parenting the next generation so that maybe as we're parenting them, we're not just saying like, do this, but I'm going to do this too. What are some of those things that we can do to,
So there are a lot of things that need to happen. I think I read somewhere that we are at our most segregated since like the 70s. That wasn't, we didn't get segregated based on policies that said white people can't be in the same place as black people, but there are laws in place that allow for segregation and allow for, and it's like based on property values, it's based on red line, it's just all these different things that let us separate races, and that needs to stop. I mean, if we can integrate like neighborhoods and schools and stuff like that, then you get that experience around different races, and it's not a big deal when people are, I don't know, when you're hearing somebody use slang, you're not thinking, oh, they're a bad person. You're like, oh, I understand what they're trying to say. It's just that you say it different. Just little stuff, you know what I mean? And then, I personally think our history books do not do our history justice. They don't do any of us justice. I didn't really start learning about the history of this country until I decided to pick up a book and start reading about it. They give us this whitewashed view of how beautiful our country's origins are. And yeah, there was this little thing called the Native American genocide. Oh, there's this little thing called slavery, but that's all done. We're all past that. Everybody's happy, all that kind of stuff. And being honest about the origins of our country, to me, don't knock our country. I think this is an incredible country that has incredible potential, but we will never realize that if we're so worried about black people and white people or gay and straight or man or woman. That has nothing to do with making this country great.
Yeah.
So education is big. People need to want to integrate the races. Like, there's still plenty of people in this country who are like, yeah, it's fine. They stay over there. I stay over here. We're all happy. Like, all right, you're happy now until something happens, and then all of a sudden you got 2 whole communities at each other's necks.
Yeah.
Like, the communities need to come together.
It starts with communication, right? It starts with conversations, right? Conversations.
Doing stuff like this is important. But these conversations, if these fall on deaf ears, then we feel good about ourselves, and then we go back to doing what we do, and all of a sudden there's another riot, and people are wondering, well, what's going on? Well, man, we've been trying to say it.
And we can't be afraid to have conversations, right? If I hear peers of mine, maybe who are white, say something, I need to be able to stand up and say, hey, that's uncool, right? You said, if you're sitting in a room with someone, you have no problem going over and saying, hey guys, that's not the right thing to say, right? And you have to be brave enough to be like, okay, I'm not going to accept that. Because especially I remember growing up, if I couldn't fight every black joke that came my way. So eventually you just sit there and let them tell their freaking jokes and then move on. But the world doesn't get better. What was Martin Luther King Jr.'s saying? The only thing needed for evil to triumph is for good to do nothing. So even if you don't support it, silence is supporting it, if that makes sense. Because
it gives that person it gives them more boldness that, oh, this is an accepted idea. So as long as it doesn't even have to be some violent correction, it's just, hey, I don't like that. That's not funny. Don't do that. That's all it has to be. It didn't even have to be an issue. If they want to make an issue out of it, that's fine. But in that situation, for them, is always going to be linked to someone saying, hey, that's not cool. So they're going to be a little less excited about saying some racist joke or saying some sexist joke. You don't even have to be mad about it. Just, hey, I don't like that. Don't say that. That's not cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just sometimes cutting it off, addressing it, looking right in the eye and saying, I don't appreciate you saying that. Right.
Yeah.
And we should stop. And all of a sudden, maybe that makes that, maybe the next time they think about it, but then they don't say it. Then the next time they think about it, don't say it. The next time they don't think about it. Right. And it gets us.
And nobody likes to be the fun police, but I mean, I don't see why we have to say racist jokes or sexist jokes or homophobic stuff, and just why correcting that would be the fun police. That's just, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned it earlier in our line of work, in real estate. I mean, we say it almost as a joke, but it's true. It doesn't matter the color as long as green, as long as the buyer can afford the house. That's all that really matters is can the buyer afford it, right?
Yeah.
And equal housing is a big deal for me. It's a big deal for our industry. I know the National Association of Realtors, there's the fair housing is not just a statement. It's finding the right house for the right person in the right neighborhood at the right time. Right. And that means a place where they feel they can turn that house into a home.
And I think it's important to recognize, like, we have these fair housing laws and all these other laws that their whole point of the law is you don't get to exclude Black people. Now, I think it's really important to understand what it means to even have to have that law. Like, there had to be a law to tell white Americans, hey, you don't get to just not sell this house to somebody who can pay you the money for this house. And I think that also shows that this is built because Black people have been oppressed for a long time. It didn't say you had to sell it to white people. Specifically, it was telling people, like, hey, you can't just push colored people or whatever out just because you don't like them for what they look like, whatever. The fact that we have to have those laws still to this day shows that we haven't gotten to this point where the community of America truly believes in the equality of everybody.
All right. So, Michael, let's finish up. I mean, we can't ever finish this conversation. We got to keep having this conversation.
We can have this forever.
When you're my age, what do you think the world? How do we make the world look better? And you shouldn't have to wait till you're my age, by the way. How do we make the world?
I think it'll be quite a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
These are big issues, man. These aren't going to be solved with the next presidency. They're not going to be solved in 20 years or 30 years. Like, we're trying to unravel 300-400 years of really, really bad stuff. And that's just America. That's not even the whole world we've been built on violence and murder and rape and all that horrible stuff. That was the role of the world for a long time. And we're drastically trying to say, hey, we don't need violence in this world anymore. We've got enough resources and enough systems where everybody can live a good life. We're not fighting for resources the way we used to be. Now, I know that we still are, in a lot of ways, competing with other countries, but within our country, we're not fighting for bread. We have the resources. It's just we need to not more evenly distribute, but we need to invest in our own people. So I think this is going to be a long time, but it's good to see people at least willing to have the conversation and hopefully do some introspection, because I know it's hard for white people specifically, to look at that and be like, I didn't get any extra benefits from being white that a Black person. I worked my butt off, and I've got no doubt that white people have had to work their butt off. That it's a meritocracy. This is how this country is set up. But it's just saying that you knew that if you worked hard, you could go ahead. And a lot of Black people in this country know that if they work hard, they're still Black, and they're still going to get cut out of those higher paying jobs or those different communities that you're trying to get into. And I think that's the biggest difference that people need to understand, because as soon as we can, as a group, come together and just say, like, listen, it ain't about whether you're Black, white, gay, straight, man, woman. It's just about, what are you doing for the community? How are you giving back? How hard do you work? What kind of attitude do you bring? And if we get to that I don't really think it should be that hard, but some people are pretty rooted.
Yeah, look at this comment from Anthony. Just talks about that, just the fact that there's a law there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always think it's funny that we as realtors, we have to take an ethics class every 3 years. It's like we have to take it to make sure you understand the ethics, and they have to take.
I don't think it's natural. It's not natural. It's natural to have that tribal mentality of people that look like me are more like me than that person. It's something that you've got to work on. And I think we're seeing a lot of these passive skills that we thought, oh, well, I shouldn't have to actively think about. I like it, Elaine. Thank you. I shouldn't have to actively think about being a good person. I shouldn't have to actively think about not being racist or not letting those racist thoughts just kind of roll through. But it's an active thing. You have to think about it, because maybe you're walking and you see a black person and something just passes by. And you don't think it's a problem because you didn't vocalize, you didn't act on it. But just even having those thoughts every time they pop up, it plays a role in how you perceive different people.
Yeah, Michael, there's a cliche that says managers do things right, leaders do the right thing, right? This whole thing, I think maybe a way we can kind of wrap this conversation up is, I think that metaphor of the boy on the beach with the starfish, right? Little boy's on the beach, walking on the beach, and he's throwing the starfish back into the receding tide. And the old man walks up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm saving these starfish from getting washed up on the sand." And he says, "Son, look down the beach. There's thousands of starfish.
Yeah.
How do you think you're going to help all of them?" And the little boy reaches down, picks up the next starfish, and throws him back in the ocean. So to help that one.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to save the world.
Yeah.
Like, if each one of us does is looks at how we treat people and how we're raising our kids and says, I would like to treat people better, and I would like to raise my kids to treat people better. Because every single person, I don't care if you're Gandhi, you have room to improve in how we treat people. Because I think humans are inherently selfish. So we have to fight those urges, and we have to actively look at how we treat people. And I mean, like I said, I think we can do it. It's just, first of all, you have to believe that helping black people will help white people. I don't understand why there's this feeling that, oh, if I'm helping black people, then white people are going to lose something. Or if I'm helping gay people, then straight people are going to lose something. It doesn't work like that. If you help the weakest among you or the most oppressed among you, everybody goes up. And once that starts catching on, that people understand, like you got to help your weakest link, then we'll roll pretty quickly. But that's a really hard thing for people to understand, especially, I mean, you see it with Black Lives Matter. All of a sudden there's White Lives Matter. Well, no, it doesn't add that way. Just because Black Lives Matter doesn't mean all of a sudden now white lives matter less. It just means we want to matter as much as white lives.
Right. Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell says the opposite of bad isn't good. It's not bad. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So
it doesn't work that way, right? So, dude, I love this conversation. I love the fact that, like I said, a 53-year-old white guy and a 27-year-old black guy can talk about things that are not just generic, Right. And I think every time I talk to you, you make me see things a little bit clearer, hopefully a little more.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah.
Like I said, I can only start with me, and I can impact my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, if I can impact them a little bit, that they can influence their roommates and friends and coworkers, and they can influence their roommates and friends and coworkers, and maybe some of the kids can influence their parents.
Mm-hmm. Just little. And I mean, I know I've got plenty of, I'm not some guru or anything like that. I got plenty of work I can do on how I treat people better and how I understand different populations. But I think being biracial really gave me a glimpse into both the white and black community, and you can see them from the inside, and you also get this outside perspective from both of them. So I just from where I was born, I got an opportunity to examine these systems and these relationships in ways that a lot of other people don't get to.
Yeah. Love it. Michael, I appreciate the conversation. I really do. Let's finish up. Let's finish up with my speed round, a chance for people to get to know who you are a little bit more on the inside.
Let's do it.
No extra thoughts on these, just your answers. Favorite vacation spot?
Oh, California.
Any spot? Southern Cal, NorCal?
I took a vacation and drove up from Northern Cal to Southern Cal, and I did not find a place that I didn't like on that drive.
It's such a cool area, right? I mean, it's such a different area from, up to the redwoods and,
Yeah. And seeing that Pacific Ocean is incredible.
Michael, your favorite band or musician? Who's your go-to jam?
Oh, I'm all over the place, honestly. It really depends on the mood. I hate to say Drake, but he's got songs for every different occasion, but there's something in me that just does not want to say Drake. So I'm going to say all over the place.
So you shuffle a lot on your iPod. Is kind of a lot of everything.
Yeah, sometimes it's alternative, a lot of times it's rap, sometimes it's R&B. I really like some of those electronic songs. I'm all over the place depending on what I'm doing.
All right, I think TV movies, sports movies give it maybe a stereotype, but who does pick the music in the locker rooms?
Usually the older guys.
Older guys.
So if you're a freshman rolling into a college team, you're not allowed to put any music on. I remember that in college, I'm pretty sure Coach Mick would put the music on.
Okay.
Because if you let the players do it, we'd be playing some wild stuff.
Strength coach, right?
Yeah, but in the NFL, it was whoever. So whatever old guy got to the weight room first. So sometimes we were listening to country, sometimes we were listening to AC/DC, sometimes we were listening to Nas or some of these newer artists like Lil Wayne.
If you didn't like it, put your beats on and listen to your own music, right?
You could do that, but you just get used to it. Like I said, I don't mind listening to country. I won't put it on myself. I don't mind listening to hard rock. I won't put it on myself, but I can lift to anything unless it's like some lullaby stuff.
Michael, what's the movie you think you've watched the most in your life?
Oh, it has to be some Will Ferrell movie. Maybe Talladega Nights.
Okay.
There was a brief period when I had to babysit my little sister, and I think we watched Shrek maybe 30 times a day because they always had this dance party on at the end, and she just wanted to dance the whole time. So maybe Lion King.
Will Ferrell, you're a comedy guy.
Will Ferrell, yeah, I like his. Yeah, I like what he does.
He's goofy. My favorite, Will Ferrell. Michael, your favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough.
Okay. Michael, this is a good one. Advice from your mom or your dad that you still heed?
My mom once told me there aren't as many rules as you think there are. And that was a really interesting thing to hear. And I'm still trying to fully process how that fits into like everyday life. But that was easy because, I grew up, like I said, both of them were military. They were very strict. So I grew up I followed rules fundamentally. Like I did not see that there was any leeway. If the law or the rule said this, then that's what I was doing. And if you chose not to do that, that was wild. And so when she said there aren't as many rules as you think there are, that basically it wasn't like go break laws. It was just, you can be who you want to be. You can live your life how you want to live. And you don't still treat people well, all that kind of stuff. But you don't need to put yourself in this box that other people have made for you. You can find out what else is out there. I
love that. Good advice from your mom. Michael, are you a pet owner?
I am. I got me a big Great Dane.
Named?
Raina. Sleeping over there or just staring out the window while I do this.
Spanish for queen, right?
Spanish for queen. Yep, and she knows it too.
And she's not a little puppy. She's a big one.
She's about 100 pounds, so she's actually pretty small for a Great Dane, but she's pretty big for every other dog.
Michael, what's your ideal weekend? It might have been different when it was when you were in the NFL, but what's your ideal weekend right now?
Ideal weekend would be just hanging out with friends and family. Whatever we do really makes no difference to me as long as I'm around good people. Yeah.
Good answer. What was the last show or series that you binge watched?
Eastbound and Down. Have you ever heard of that?
Football show, isn't it?
No, it's a baseball show. It's Danny McBride. It is a mess of a show, but that stupid comedy cracks me up.
Two more, Michael. Something on your bucket list.
I would like to see as many different sports competitions in as many different countries as possible. I had an opportunity to go see a Premier League soccer game and to see a La Liga soccer game, and getting to see how these different countries celebrate their sports and how these different places compete just made me really want to, I want to go to New Zealand and watch an all-black game. And I want to go to I don't know, some obscure place that has an obscure sport and just see what they do and how much they enjoy that competition. Because I love watching competition. I love watching athletics. And just to see how these other countries get behind the same stuff is really exciting.
Yeah, go watch like a Liverpool game in the EPL, right?
Yeah.
Michael, last question, and then we'll wrap up on what you're doing next. What does success mean to you? Not the Webster's dictionary definition, but what does it mean to you?
Accomplishing the goals that you set out or that you set, but more than that, setting lofty goals. So, it's tough. Yeah. When I think like what
you're goal oriented. I mean, you see stuff and you want to get to it.
Yeah. I try to set goals that I'm not sure if I can reach them or not, because I know if I set a goal that is as close to unreachable as possible, that I'm going to accomplish a whole bunch of stuff in that pursuit of that goal. And even if I don't get that just insurmountable goal, that's all right, because then I can look back and be proud of what I did and the work that I put in and the goals and the accomplishments that I had leading to that, which kind of goes against achieving your goals, because to me it's more about just working hard and being happy with what you do. If you put the work in, and if you're a good person, then to me you're successful. Whether you're rich or whatever, it makes no difference as long as you live your life right.
That's awesome. Michael, you're off the Carp's Corner hot seat. Good job.
Man, I don't know if my brain can move that fast.
Finish up. You before we went on the air, you were telling me you've been studying a lot lately. What is up next on the Michael Bennett to-do list?
Next step is I'm studying for the LSAT, the law school admissions test, and the GMAT, which, like I said, I think it's the General Master's Admissions Test or something like that. I'm going to go get my law degree and a business degree at the same time. Once again, like I said, I like setting those lofty goals because it gives me something to chase, and I know that if I set something that, who knows if I can reach it, I'm gonna do a lot of stuff on the way there.
And you kind of have your dream school right now would be getting your JD from Northwestern. Is that right?
Northwestern has a really good program, and it's a 3-year program. Everything, they've got a lot going for them. I still have a couple other schools that I'm interested in, but I'm leaning towards Northwestern. But Ohio State also has a great law program and a great business program, and it's still in Columbus. So I got to decide if I want to move again, if I want to go learn about a new city for 3 years, or if I just want to put down some roots in Columbus.
Yeah, good. And with that dual degree, you're looking to do what?
I'm not sure exactly. I haven't had much opportunities to really, check out what kind of job markets I want to do. I really like the idea of being an entrepreneur in the real estate field. And I know that getting my JD MBA would set me up really well for that. I'm tempted to be a defense attorney, but lawyers have a different lifestyle that I'm not sure I want to really adopt. So I'm hoping that I can get some good job shadow opportunities, internship opportunities to really narrow down my interests. But whatever my interests are, I know that those degrees are going to help me accomplish those.
Well, Michael, I'd say maybe you're on the right path because defense got you wondering. Maybe a defense attorney gets you something else. So
exactly.
it's been great catching up. I'm glad we were able to talk, and I hope we can continue these conversations, whether they're in person or whether they're on the phone or text messages. I look forward to getting in that house in a couple weeks and getting it turned and see what happens next. But listen, man, on behalf of everyone who tuned in, Michael Bennett's his name, and he's a fine young man, and I can't wait to see what he does next. So on behalf of Michael, I'm Sean Carpenter. Guys, as always, keep building relationships, solving problems, and having fun. We'll see you next time on Carp's Corner Conversations.